Good morning, guys. Glad to have you on here. This is day 6 of Destroying a Victim Mentality, and today we're talking about how God can turn any bad situation for your good. Today, the first verse we're going to be focusing on, it's going to be in Romans chapter 8, verse 28. And the reason that I'm really wanting to hammer this point home today is because too many people focus on their problems and they don't realize that God can bring good out of any circumstance. So this is verse 28 of Romans chapter 8, and it says, and we know, not we think, not we hope, not we wish, it says we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to His purpose for them. And he says we know this, that God causes everything, every single thing, not most things, not some things. God causes everything to work together for our good, for the good of those who love God and are called according to His purpose for them. So if you love God, and if you have answered the call of God on your life, where He's called you into salvation, you've answered that call, you're coming into His purpose, you're living an eternal life with Him, you've entered into this love relationship with God, now God will cause every single thing to work together for your good. Most people don't believe that. They don't believe that. Maybe they believe it when I read it in the Bible and they say, amen, preach it, brother, that's good. But they don't live this. If they really lived this, then they would focus on God, on His love and on His purpose for them, rather than focusing on their problems. He says that God causes everything to work together. He doesn't for the good. He doesn't say that everything that happens to you is good. And yet too many people focus on the bad things that have happened to them, rather than focusing on the God that's going to work it together for your good. If you focus on your problem, God can't fix it. But if you focus on God, then there is no problem too big for God to fix in your life. And every single problem, every single tragedy, every single mistake you may have made and its consequence, every single bad decision someone else made and its consequences in your life, every single tragedy that came against you, every circumstance, every situation, good and bad, God will cause it all to work together for your good. I want to show you a biblical example back in the Old Testament. In the book of Genesis, we're looking at the life of Joseph. Now, Joseph was the son of Jacob, and he was his father's favorite son. And his brothers, they were jealous of him. They hated him because he was his father's favorite. And then Joseph, he starts having these dreams where he sees in his dreams his brothers and his father bowing down before him. And he tells his brothers and he tells his father, and his brothers hate him for it even more. So that one day his father sends him out to where his brothers are tending their flocks of sheep to see how they're doing. And his brothers see him coming and say, look, this dreamer is coming. Let's throw him into a pit and kill him. So they grab him, they tear off his clothes, they throw him into a pit. And then they have this idea, let's not kill him so his blood's not on our hands. Let's just sell him into slavery and make some money off of it. So they sell him to the Ishmaelites, and Joseph is sent into Egypt. And there he is bought by a man by the name of Potiphar. And this man Potiphar, he works for Pharaoh, and Joseph as his servant, everything that is put under Joseph's authority is blessed. And Potiphar sees that. So Joseph becomes the highest ranking member of Potiphar's household. He gets made his steward, and he's over everything that Potiphar has. So he's gone from slave, that's a tragedy, into where he is the steward of everything that Potiphar has. That's God turning something evil into something good right there. But the tragedy hits again. Now Potiphar's wife gets her eyes on Joseph and decides that she wants him. So she keeps pestering him, and, lie with me, have sex with me. And he says, how can I do this grievous sin against God? He doesn't say, this is wrong, we're going to get caught, this is dangerous, we're going to get caught, you're another man's wife. He doesn't say that. He says, how can I do this grievous sin against God? His focus in that time was not on what he can get away with. His focus in that time was not success. If he had been focused on the bad stuff he'd come through, I was a slave, my brother sold me into slavery, I've had such a hard life, and yet by my own hard work, I became the steward of Potiphar's household. If he'd been focused on that, he might have rationalized, it's okay for me to have sex with this lady. I deserve this. This is understandable. But he didn't. He was focused on God. He said, how could I do such a wicked thing? It would be a great sin against God. His focus was on God. And so then Potiphar's wife, she accuses Joseph to her husband, saying he tried to rape me. And so Potiphar's mad. He gets Joseph thrown into prison. And then in verse 21 of Genesis 39, it says, but the Lord was with Joseph in prison and showed him his faithful love. And the Lord made Joseph a favorite with the prison warden. Before long, the warden put Joseph in charge of all the other prisoners and over everything that happened in the prison. The warden had no more worries because Joseph took care of everything. The Lord was with him and caused everything he did to succeed. So even in prison, his focus is on God, and the Lord is with him, and he is succeeding. This is another example of God taking something bad that happened, a circumstance, and causing it to work together for good. But we're about to see the biggest one yet. Then two of Pharaoh's servants, they get thrown into prison because they make their master upset. So in one night, both of them have a dream. One of them was Pharaoh's cupbearer, the other was his chief baker. And they have their dreams, and Joseph interprets the dreams for them. And they come to pass just like he interpreted. The cupbearer, he gets reinstated in his position as the cupbearer to Pharaoh again. And the baker gets his head chopped off, and his eyes get eaten by birds. And I'm glad I'm not the one who had to deliver that message. You know what your dream means? It means you're going to die. Birds are going to eat your eyeballs. I'm glad I didn't have to deliver that message. That doesn't sound very loving, Not very comforting, uplifting, encouraging. Yeah, birds going to eat your eyeballs, bro. No, glad that wasn't me. So then Joseph tells the butler, the cupbearer, he tells him, when you come back to your position working for Pharaoh, remember me. I'm here unjustly. Remember me. Don't forget me. But then, as soon as he takes his place as Pharaoh's cupbearer again, in verse 23 of chapter 40 here, it says, Pharaoh's chief cupbearer, however, forgot all about Joseph, never giving him another thought. Then 2 years later, Pharaoh, and this is 2 years of Joseph still being in prison. Now Pharaoh has 2 dreams, and they're troubling him. So he asks for some people that can give him an interpretation. And the cupbearer says, I remember my faults when I was in prison, and there was this man who in one night, me and the baker, we had our dreams, and this man interpreted our dreams, and they came to pass just like he interpreted for us. And when Pharaoh hears this, he calls for Joseph. And so Joseph, shaves, and they bring him to Joseph to him. And Joseph interprets his dreams and says, these dreams are God showing you that there's going to be a great famine. There will be 7 years of plenty and bounty, and then 7 years of a great famine where there's going to be no food. So he says, you need to have a wise man put over all of Egypt to collect the extra from these 7 years and save it up for the 7 years of famine. All right. This is verse 33 of Genesis 41. I'm just trying to give you the short version. It says, therefore Pharaoh should find an intelligent and wise man and put him in charge of the entire land of Egypt. And then Pharaoh should appoint supervisors over the land and let them collect 1/5 of all the crops during the 7 good years. Have them gather all the food produced in the good years that are just ahead, and Bring it to Pharaoh's storehouses. Store it away and guard it, so there will be food in the cities. That way there will be enough to eat when the 7 years of famine come to the land of Egypt. Otherwise this famine will destroy the land." Joseph's suggestions were well received by Pharaoh and his officials. So Pharaoh asked his officials, "Can we find anyone else like this man, so obviously filled with the Spirit of God?" Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has clearly revealed the meaning of the dreams to you, clearly no one else is as intelligent and wise as you are. You will be in charge of my court, and all my people will take orders from you. Only I, sitting on my throne, will have rank higher than yours." Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I hereby put you in charge of the entire land of Egypt." So he just went from being a slave to being the steward, to being a prisoner, to being the head of the prison, to being second command of all of Egypt. That's God turning an evil situation for good. An evil situation for good. And so in process of time, when there's the famine, their famine is very severe in Canaan where his brothers are, and they need to come to get food. And so it's a long story, but finally Joseph reveals himself to his brothers. You know, as soon as they could have come, he could have said, "These are the men that did me wrong. I'm going to have them killed." He could have. He was second command of all of Egypt. It would have been super easy. But he didn't. When he finally revealed himself to them, he was weeping and he was wanting to hear about how his father was. And he has them bring everyone into Egypt to live in the land of Goshen because of the famine. But then Jacob dies, the father. And his brothers, they're afraid. They're like, when Jacob was alive, of course Joseph wasn't going to do anything to us. But now that Jacob is dead, the brothers are afraid. So in verse 14 of Genesis 50, after burying Jacob, Joseph returned to Egypt with his brothers and all who had accompanied him to his father's burial. But now that their father was dead, Joseph's brothers became fearful. "Now Joseph will show his anger and pay us back for all the wrong we did to him," they said. So they sent this message to Joseph. "Before your father died, he instructed us to say to you, 'Please forgive your brothers for the great wrong they did to you, for their sin in treating you so cruelly. For we, the servants of God, the God your father, beg you to forgive our sin.'" When Joseph received the message, he broke down and wept. Then his brothers came and threw themselves down before Joseph. "Look, we are your slaves," they said. But Joseph replied, "Don't be afraid of me. Am I God that I can punish you? You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. He brought me to this position so I could save the lives of many people. No, don't be afraid. I will continue to take care of you and your children." So Joseph, in his life, in this last little verse, you can see clearly that Joseph had a lot of tragedy happen to him, a lot of bad things, a lot of bad situations and circumstances. But God brought those evil circumstances against him, caused them to work together for his good so that he could be a blessing. And he saved the children of Israel. He saved Egypt. God used him for great good despite of great tragedy. And God, the same God, can do the same and even greater for you. There's no circumstance so bad in your life that God can't bring something good out of it. Now, I didn't say the circumstance was good. The circumstance, it'll never be good. But God will turn it around to cause it to work for good. God caused Joseph being sold into slavery to turn into him being the head of Potiphar's household. He caused him being lied against and sent into prison to make him the head of the prison so that he could interpret these dreams. And then when Pharaoh had these dreams, Joseph was in the right place for him to be made the next person in charge of Egypt. Basically the prime minister of Egypt. Every bad circumstance, God turned it around for his good. And that's the same God we serve. And this God, he is the God of the universe. He created all that is. He sent his only begotten Son to die for you. He is love and he loves you. And he has shown his love to you time and time again. So if the God of the universe, of all power, loves you above any love you could ever imagine, He will turn everything in your life for good. But He can only do it if you qualify here in Romans 8:28, where it says, we know that He works all things together for the good of those who love God and are called according to His purpose for them. You know, Jesus said, many are called, but few are chosen. God calls so many people to Him. The call of salvation, come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, I will give you rest. God is calling, 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 but very few answer that call to follow Him in His call and follow Him in His purpose and enter into this love relationship with God. But when you do and you focus on God above your circumstances, God can bring good out of every evil circumstance. I want to show you in the book of Psalms, Psalm 23. All right, I love this psalm. This is the Lord is my shepherd psalm. This is one of my favorites. And it says, even when I walk through the darkest valley, or in the King James it says, even when I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. He says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. He doesn't say I stop there, camp out there, focus on the valley of the shadow of death, focus on my bad circumstances, focus on bad situations, focus on the tragedies. No, he says, when I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will not fear any evil, for you are with me. The Lord was with Joseph in slavery, in prison. The Lord was with him. And Joseph was so focused on Him that when he was tempted, he didn't say, I'll get caught. He said, how can I sin against my God, the one I serve, the one who is with me? His focus was on God. And so, if you have been a victim of any little thing in your life, if you focus on that, you can't focus on God. Your eyes, you can only focus on one thing at a time. You cannot focus on bad circumstances, bad situations, problems, things people have done wrong to you. You can't focus on that and yet focus on God. So I'm encouraging you and telling you to focus with a singular focus on God and on His plan for your life, on this love relationship you have with Him. And as you focus on Him and follow Him and stay faithful to Him, He'll cause every bad circumstance to work together for your good. And you could be doing this so well, but if at any time you get your focus off of God and you focus on your circumstances, that is when your life will begin to stagnate and to go down again. Because there will always be bad circumstances for you to focus on. But if you focus on God, He'll turn around for your good. But if you focus on your problems, you're going to live there and be stuck there and live with the consequences of what you did and what happened. There is so much in life that will come against you. But none of it is ever so big that God can't turn it around for good. You know what, I've had a lot of bad stuff happen to me personally, but I've never been sold into slavery. I've never been accused of a crime I didn't commit and get thrown into prison. That's never happened to me. And God turned that together for Joseph's good. He can do the same for me because He's the God of all power. He's the Almighty God. He's the God who is almighty and is love. So if I trust Him and remain committed to Him and focused on Him, He'll work everything out for my good. That's what I want to encourage you with. When God is for you, when you are His child, when you are the child of the Most High God, and your Father loves you more than you could ever imagine being loved. When a circumstance comes, how stupid would it be to focus on that circumstance and say, I'm a victim. I'm stuck here. Bad stuff just happens to me and I just live with it. That is an attitude of victimhood. But when you focus on your God, who is the God of the universe, who is with you, who does love you, that's an attitude of victory. Saying, I know my God will take care of me, and I'm just going to stay submitted and committed to Him, and I expect good things. Hope I've encouraged you with this. I love you guys, I bless you guys, and I hope you join me on here later.